Okay, here we are with piece of student work, Finian McManus, one of my students at the Art Centre. What I'm doing here is going to do some perspective guides to show some of the students how you can check your perspective. Pretty straightforward. Using the line tool here over the grid. The grid will space the lines out nicely. I have the grid set to snap, so it snaps the lines nicely spaced. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make these lines and double them up here and manipulate them using the transform tool under perspective. So here I'm trying to find out, just visually looking at this, I know there's a number of issues with regards to the vanishing points. There's one below our feet, and there's probably a couple there in the distance as I'm looking at the pillars and the details on the pillars and the base of the pillars. So right now I'm working on the one that's below our feet. I'm just showing here where Finian's perspective is. Just checking that on a series of the pillars on the right hand side and see how it affects the ones on the left and vice versa. And you see there's issues, they don't all follow the same perspective. So where I have one lined up, the others kind of fall apart perspective wise. So what I'm going to do now is do what I feel should be the correct perspective. And I'm pulling this center line to the right here because we're actually to the right of center of the room, and that's where you want your vanishing point, right below you, the right of center. So here I'm just checking the perspective there. Now what I'm doing here is I'm looking at the vanishing points at the end of the room, bringing my guides down from the rulers. I'm just looking for a single vanishing point here. Again, using the same technique as before. So I foresee a couple of vanishing points here, and of course you only want one. Again, using the perspective tool in the transform area. You can see the base of these pillars they're not lining up correctly. Like two of them might be in perspective, but look at the ones on the right, the lower right, they're kind of all over. So I'm looking at my ceiling here, or Finian's ceiling here. This perspective for a ceiling is a completely different and higher vanishing point, and it just doesn't work when you start looking at how the pillars are going to line up with that higher vanishing point. So here I'm just putting the back wall in. What I see works with the proportions and the vanishing point here. So you can see there's issues with the pillars. You have to choose which vanishing point you want to use in things like this. So this is a good way of just checking your perspective. Of course, you want to do this prior to doing a rendering. Once you've done your line drawing, just checking it this way. It's pretty accurate. Of course, there's no distortion. So that was for Finian. Now we have Amy Chen's interior. And she's got her vanishing points at what point on the right hand side is. It's quite close, but she's fine. But the floor isn't showing the perspective that you would require for a vanishing point so close to the frame. Same technique as before. Had a few little issues here with the line tool thickness. But anyway, same technique as before, and duplicate these horizontal lines. It's a nice interior, it's just the perspective is off. You've got a basic 2-point perspective here, but she's showing 3 vanishing points. I'm just getting these all nice and accurate. You just got to be patient. So I'm looking at some of her perspective lines and looking for her vanishing point, and then moving the lines here accordingly. So you can see there's issues here on the floor. Some of the lines coincide with that vanishing point and others just do not. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to work on the second vanishing point, which is in the distance at the back of the room on the left. And we've got a couple of issues with that because the way these ribs and the way the floor flows tells me that she's working on a couple of different vanishing points. So again, you have to, like thinning, you have to decide which ones work for what you're showing. I'm doing green lines here, just to set it apart from the blue ones. Remembered I had to bring that top part down to the horizon. There we go. Just try and search for it. Looking at the floor that she's got, it's going to be widespread here. So you can see there's issues there on the floor. Now this is one way of doing it. The other way, of course, is just instead of doing the lines in perspective, you just do single lines in perspective. Here's an example of that. I'm just showing where things don't line up. Tops of the ribs. It's okay if they're all over, if they're a little short and some are a little long. Just got to make sure it's not a mistake and it's actually meant to be. The bases of them here on the left is incorrect. So of course when you do your line drawings, they have to be you know, generally perfectly in perspective so people can understand what they're looking at and it's clear. So just having a second look at the blue lines here. I'm going to pull them over to the right. So the vanishing point on the right hand side is right there. It's pretty close. The closer your vanishing points are to each other, the more distortion you're going to have, the more you know, it just gets more distorted. It's like a wide angle lens. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.